I like to put this map up and talk a little bit about who's who in the Middle East, because there are major tribal divisions in that part of the world, and people don't have it all straight yet. This tan area of the map is basically the Islamic area of the Middle East. And when we look at the Arab world, we're talking about a language which is, what, Semitic. It's a Semitic language. So the Arab speakers and the Hebrew speakers in Israel are speaking the ancient tribal reality called Semitic. And Hebrew was reconstituted after having become just a liturgical language, kind of like Latin became in the Vatican. It wasn't really used as a household language anymore, but it was reconstituted after 1948 when Israel showed up. But those are Semitic speakers. There are many other Semitic languages that you might have heard of, like Amharic in Ethiopia. Aramaic was the language that was the form of Semitic speaking language most popular around the time of Christ. And there are still Aramaic speaking villages in Iraq and in Syria to this day. Now, get this, Iran is Indo-European, not related to Semitic people at all. Turkey is Turkish, not related to Semitic at all. The Berber languages in Morocco and Algeria are Berber languages, not related to the Semitic speakers at all. Now, let's go back to Iran for a second. When I mentioned that they speak an Indo-European language there, I'd like to elaborate a little and point out that the Indo-European family of languages goes all the way from northern India to America, through Europe. I'll list a few of the language families in Indo-European: Hindu, Farsi in Iran, the Urdu language in Pakistan, and the languages in Afghanistan, and Slavic languages like Russian, and Germanic languages, and Albanian, and Greek, and Armenian, and the Romance languages, and the Celtic languages. This is a bunch of languages that we're all kind of familiar with because they're all part of our tribe. Now, when we're 2 years old, we've been listening to our mother and father talk to us for a couple years, and what's happened is we've learned to process meaning the way that our mother tongue processes meaning. Mother tongue. I don't remember if my mom spent a lot of time licking me or not. The mother tongue is what you have deeply buried in you. It's your first way of processing meaning. And if your mother tongue is an Indo-European language, you can go all the way to northern India and you can get what people are meaning. And in fact, you can take religions that grew up in Indo-European environments like Buddhism and Hinduism and package them easily for any other Indo-European to understand, because we all basically think alike, whether we're from Iran or from northern India or from America. If, however, you try and package a religion that grew up in a Semitic world, like Islam, for Indo-Europeans, well, doesn't really work very well, which is why Islam is an endless mystery to Indo-Europeans. In order to understand what my friend Mustafa is thinking and feeling, I need to take a step toward him and get a little bit of this is what the world needs. We need to approach each other. Okay, in a nutshell, Semitic people process meaning with verbs. Indo-Europeans do it with nouns. We're happy if we've labeled something. It doesn't matter how abstract the label is. But we can take a label, we can paste it on something with a piece of Scotch tape, And then we can relax because we feel like we've understood it. In Semitic languages, that doesn't interest them. They need to be that thing. They need to act it out. They're verbs. Indo-European people are nouns. Semitic-speaking people are verbs. And when you see all those people in Islamic groups doing, Islam is not a noun. There is no religion called Islam, historically. That's kind of an Indo-European label. Islam means to surrender. And when those people are actually surrendering to the will of God, together, that's what they're doing. They're not labeling it, they're doing it. That is the key difference between Semitic people and Indo-European people. The Turkish people came down from Central Asia, and they came down around the 11th, 12th, 13th century. Their language is related to the Mongol languages and distantly to Korean. It has nothing in common with Semitic ways of being. Just as Iranians have nothing in common with Semitic ways of being, other than that they took Islam. But aside from reading the Quran, which they do in Arabic, their Indo-European language holds them apart from the Semitic world. And when your Iranian friend explains the Middle East to you, even if his English isn't that great, you'll understand what he's trying to say because we process meaning the same way. I hate to say it, but when Mustafa explains the Middle East to you, you'll say, his English is really good, but I don't have a clue of what that man's point was.
That's why I'm bringing music.
That's why we do it with music. Yeah, it's the way to communicate across these tribal boundaries. Anyway, the point of all this is that people in America just don't have a clue. They think Afghanistan is an Arabic country. You know, you can't even begin to understand Afghanistan if you think it's an Arabic country. It's important to try and learn a little bit of basic stuff about the world. There are some better journalistic pieces coming out which explain some of these things. Like, for example, that in the Arab world, they haven't had a government of their own for guess how long now? 800 years. We need to work toward a world with no borders. That's where we're working toward. I mean, in the ancient world, nations were tribes of people. If the tribe moved, the borders moved. Now, in the European colonial age, they came along and they actually fastened these borders to the ground and put them on maps because they now had this advanced cartography. And now you've got all these people trying to figure out, oh my God, I'm on this side of the line. I should be on that side of the line. Why doesn't the line move? We all speak this language. Well, the line doesn't move. The lines were drawn by the British, for God's sakes. With a ruler. Anyway, back to the people. I think if you asked an Arab how well the Turks or the Iranians get Islam, they would say, well, they're trying.
They have a different interpretation of it.
You know, you get very different angles, very different flavors. And of course it helps that they do read the Quran in Arabic and that they make an effort. And in a lot of the Indo-European world, of course, we're not Islamic, so we don't make much of an effort. And so we're even less able to get it. But I think you'll find, if you really get into the subject, that Iranian Islam, Turkish Islam, Arabic Islam, pretty different from each other. But I might be wrong in many dimensions. Part of my job is to dangle carrots in front of you guys, to make you curious about stuff. You know, I'm not trying to be right 100% about anything. In fact, rule number one when you travel is